All right. So have you ever felt like just overwhelmed with all the self-help advice out there?
Yeah.
Like it's just not really fitting. Well, today we're diving deep into Seneca's letters, specifically the Tao of Seneca, Volume 3,
Oh, interesting.
to see if this ancient Stoic, philosopher can offer us a new perspective. We're going beyond those one-size-fits-all tips. We're looking for that timeless wisdom that you can actually put into practice, as we head into 2025.
I love
What's
that.
so fascinating about Seneca?
You know what's fascinating about Seneca is that he really challenges us to think beyond the quick fix.
Yeah.
It's not just about the what, it's about the why.
Okay.
He argues that advice that's really helpful is rooted in a solid understanding of universal principles. It's almost like having a personal philosophy, right, that guides your decisions.
So it's less about doing this specific thing and more about building that foundation.
Exactly. He calls this foundation your supreme good.
Okay.
And it's like your North Star
Okay.
for navigating life's choices.
Interesting.
It's about figuring out what truly matters to you
Uh-huh.
and then letting those values be what guides all your actions.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So how do we begin to even define that supreme good?
Well, Seneca might say it starts with being self-aware.
Okay.
What are those core values that you have?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that brings you genuine satisfaction?
Okay.
Think about those moments when you just felt really content, really fulfilled. What were the principles driving those experiences?
Like reverse engineer your happiness.
Precisely.
Find that formula.
And once you have a clear picture of your supreme good, Seneca argues, you'll be less swayed by those fleeting desires or external pressures that can, lead us astray.
Right, okay. So it's about finding that inner compass and trusting it to guide you.
Absolutely. He wouldn't just give you a to-do list.
Yeah.
He would really challenge you to become the architect of your own life, build it on this foundation of self-knowledge and carefully chosen principles.
Now that's empowering. But let's be real, even with the best compass, life throws curveballs. How does Seneca advise us to handle those inevitable hardships? The stuff that we just can't avoid.
Yeah. He definitely doesn't sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
There's a letter where he talks about how people travel all over the place,
Yeah.
searching for peace, happiness,
Oh, yeah.
only to find that their baggage comes along for the ride.
Oh, yeah, that's so true.
He even throws in a little snark. He says, it serves you right. You traveled in your own company.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a bit harsh, but also kind of funny, right?
Right. But his point is that external circumstances rarely fix internal problems.
Oh, okay, yeah.
True peace, he says, comes from cultivating that inner resilience, that unshakable core. The kind that can weather any storm.
So it's less about avoiding hardship and more about building the strength to face it head on.
Exactly. He even talks about grief, acknowledges that loss is painful. But he cautions against that excessive, prolonged mourning. It's like he's saying, feel the feels, but don't let them consume you.
Yeah.
Accept what you cannot control and focus your energy on how you choose to respond.
Yeah, I think that resonates with me. It's really easy to get stuck in that cycle of negativity.
Yeah.
But we ultimately do have a choice.
Right. And that's a key tenet of Stoicism, understanding that natural order of things
Okay.
and choosing how we respond within that. It's about finding that balance between acceptance and action.
Yeah. This is making me rethink my approach to those tough moments. Instead of just wishing things were different, it's about finding that inner strength to just navigate them.
Absolutely. And that's what's so powerful about Seneca's writing. It's not just thinking about it. It's about turning philosophy into action.
Yeah. Like
using these ideas to actually live a more fulfilling life.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this actionable thing works.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about understanding those deeper principles and then using those principles as like a framework to work through the ups and downs.
And speaking of navigating, one area where Seneca has some really insightful advice is wealth. He really goes into the difference between true and false riches.
Okay.
And spoiler alert, it's not about your bank account.
Oh, intrigue.
Yeah.
What does he consider true wealth then?
Well, he talks about how we can get so caught up in appearances and possessions that we lose sight of what truly matters.
Yeah.
In one letter, he writes, enough is never too little and not enough is never too much.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It's a powerful reminder to focus on our needs rather than getting swept up in endless wants.
I love that. It's like he's giving us permission to step off that hedonic treadmill.
Exactly. And that ties back into understanding our nature, like he talks about in another letter.
Right.
Once you know what you truly need to thrive, the endless chase for more starts to lose its appeal.
Right. So it's not about denying yourself pleasure or living like a Spartan, but it's about aligning your desires with your values
Yeah.
and really focusing on that lasting satisfaction.
That's a great way to put it. He's encouraging us to be mindful of those desires and make choices that align with our supreme good.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
It's like building a life from the inside out, starting with that strong foundation of self-awareness and virtue.
That's what makes Seneca's approach so timeless. He's not giving you a set of rules to follow. He's challenging you to really engage in a process of self-discovery, to define your own supreme good, to live in a way that reflects your truest self.
That's really powerful. I have to admit, though, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all this deep thinking. How do we actually put these ideas into practice, like in our daily lives?
That's a great question, and one that we'll explore further as we go. But I think a good place to start is with that self-awareness we talked about.
Okay, so taking some time to reflect on our core values, sources of genuine satisfaction, maybe those superficial things that might be distracting us from what really matters.
Exactly. And maybe even start a journal to capture those insights and really track your progress. Remember, for Seneca, philosophy wasn't just an intellectual pursuit. It was a way of life.
Okay, I'm excited to see where this journey takes us.
Me too. There's so much wisdom to unpack in these letters. I think you'll be surprised at how relevant and applicable his ideas are to modern life.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So, one of the most mind-bending concepts that Seneca explores is this idea of corporeal virtue.
Okay.
It's something he really delves into in letter 106.
Uh-huh.
And it really challenges our understanding of how actions and ethics kind of intertwine.
Okay, corporeal virtue. That sounds intense. Can you break it down for me?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, essentially Seneca's arguing that virtues aren't just these abstract ideals,
Okay.
just kind of floating around in our heads.
Yeah.
They have like a real tangible impact on the world.
Okay.
So he's saying our good actions, our ethical choices actually shape the fabric of reality.
So it's not just about, like, thinking about being a good person.
Exactly.
You got to actually do good things to make a difference.
He believes that our actions have this like ripple effect influencing those around us and shaping our own character.
Wow. So it's like our actions have a weight to them.
It's almost as if he's saying that our good deeds are like building blocks, you know?
Okay.
Contributing to a more virtuous and harmonious world.
Yeah.
It's not just about individual morality. It's about the collective impact.
Yeah, that's a really inspiring way to look at it. Makes you realize the potential we each have. But if our actions have such a weight to them, doesn't that also mean that we're kind of responsible for the state of the world?
That's a great question, and one that Seneca likely grappled with himself. I don't know that he would say that we're, single-handedly responsible for everything that happens.
Right.
But he'd probably argue that we each have responsibility to act virtuously within our own sphere of influence.
Okay, so it's about focusing on what we can control, our choices, our actions.
Exactly.
And then striving to make those choices reflect our supreme good.
Taking ownership of your moral compass.
Okay.
Letting it guide you in every situation. It's not about being perfect or solving all the world's problems. It's about making those conscious, ethical choices.
Yeah, this is starting to click for me. Understanding that our actions really do matter. But, I'm curious, how do these ancient ideas translate to modern life?
Yeah.
Are there people today who are actually living by these principles?
Absolutely. There's a whole modern stoicism movement out there.
Okay.
People from all walks of life finding inspiration and practical guidance in Seneca's writings. In fact, let's look at a couple of modern-day figures who have integrated Stoic principles into their lives.
Okay, I'm all ears. Who are these modern-day Stoics?
Well, one figure who comes to mind is Ryan Holiday.
Okay.
He's an author, media strategist.
Ryan Holiday. Yeah, I've heard that name. He's everywhere these days. What's his take on Stoicism?
Well, he emphasizes those practical aspects.
Okay.
Bringing it down to earth,
Yeah.
Making it accessible. He focuses on things like journaling, mindfulness, that classic Stoic principle of focusing on what you can control.
Yeah. It's interesting how all of those ancient ideas, those concepts are still relevant,
Yeah.
especially today when so much feels outside of our control.
Right. And it's not about pretending that external events don't matter. It's not about saying we shouldn't strive to make the world a better place.
Right.
It's recognizing that we can't control everything.
Uh-huh.
So instead, channel our energy into those areas where we can make a difference. Our thoughts, our actions.
So taking responsibility for our inner world
That's a great way to put it.
and then using that as a foundation to navigate the outer world.
Cultivating that inner resilience, that sense of peace and purpose.
This is making me think about all those times when I get caught up in things I can't control.
Yeah.
I'm dwelling on a past mistake or worrying about something that might happen in the future. It sounds like Stoicism offers a different approach.
Absolutely. Seneca would likely say that dwelling on the past or worrying about the future it's just a recipe for unhappiness.
Yeah, it is.
Instead, he'd encourage us to focus on the present moment, appreciate what we have, make choices that align with our values.
Right here, right now.
Right.
That reminds me of something else I've heard about Stoicism, and that's the practice of negative visualization.
Yeah.
Which sounds, kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But I've heard it can be really powerful for building resilience.
Right. You're right. It sounds kind of strange,
Hmm.
but the idea behind negative visualization isn't about being pessimistic or dwelling on the negative. It's about mentally preparing yourself for the possibility of things going wrong. You know? It's about acknowledging that challenges are just a part of life and having a plan,
So it's not about wishing bad things would happen.
Right.
It's more about acknowledging that they can happen.
Exactly. It's a way to build that mental and emotional strength.
Yeah.
So when those challenges do arise, we can face them.
Face them head on.
With courage and composure.
So it's like building up those mental muscles.
Right.
So we're ready.
Yeah.
Like that old saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
And speaking of preparing for the worst, Seneca himself talks about the importance of facing hardships in letter 96.
Right.
He's not saying that we should go out looking for trouble.
Right.
But he emphasizes the importance of being prepared to face challenges with courage and fortitude.
Okay, so it's not about avoiding hardship altogether, but like equipping ourselves to handle it?
Precisely. And that's where those Stoic practices like negative visualization come in handy.
Yeah.
It's about building that inner strength, that unshakable core.
It sounds like these modern-day Stoics, like Ryan Holiday, are really tapping into that ancient wisdom.
It's fascinating to see how these ideas are being adapted and applied.
It really is.
In these new and creative ways.
Yeah, it speaks to the enduring power of these principles.
Yeah. They're not just dusty old ideas.
Yeah.
They're living, breathing tools.
Right.
That can help us to live more fulfilling and meaningful lives.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm starting to see how Seneca's ideas can be so much more than just, some abstract philosophy.
Yeah.
It offers a practical framework for, navigating the complexities of life.
Right.
Whether we're dealing with grief or pursuing wealth or just trying to make sense of our place in the world.
And that's the beauty of Stoicism. It's not just about intellectualizing. It's about putting these ideas into action.
Yeah, I like that.
Using them to cultivate a life of virtue, resilience, and inner peace.
Before we move on, though, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, and that's this idea of understanding our own nature. It seems like that's a key element of Seneca's philosophy.
Absolutely. It's a theme that runs throughout all his letters, and it's a fundamental principle of Stoicism.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we each have a unique nature, a set of strengths and weaknesses and values that make us who we are.
Okay.
And it's about embracing that uniqueness, using it as a foundation for living a life that's true to ourselves.
So it's about getting to know ourselves.
Exactly.
On a deeper level, understanding what makes us tick.
Because how can we live a good life? How can we make virtuous choices?
Right.
If we don't even know who we are at our core.
Right. Yeah.
It's like trying to navigate a maze without a map.
Yeah.
We need to understand our own inner landscape, our values, our motivations.
That's like taking inventory, figuring out what's important, what we want to cultivate, what we might need to let go of.
Right. And it's not a, one-time process.
Right.
It's an ongoing journey.
Okay.
This continuous process of refining our understanding.
Yeah, this is starting to feel like more than just philosophy now. It's like a blueprint for personal growth.
And that's the beauty of Seneca's work. It's both timeless and timely.
Yeah.
offering guidance that's just as relevant today
Yeah.
as it was centuries ago.
This conversation has really opened my eyes to the depth and the practicality of Seneca's ideas. I'm starting to see how Stoicism isn't just an abstract philosophy. It's a way of life,
Yeah.
a set of tools for navigating the complexities of human experience and cultivating a life of virtue and resilience and inner peace.
And I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
where we'll explore how these Stoic principles can be applied to some of the most challenging aspects of human existence.
Okay.
Dealing with grief, facing hardship, and finding contentment, in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
All right, so we've talked about, understanding our nature, finding our supreme good, even how our actions have a real impact. But let's get down to like brass tacks. How do we actually use this stoic wisdom when life gets tough? Because let's be real, no one escapes hardship.
Right, and that's where Seneca's insights become so valuable. He doesn't shy away from the difficult stuff. In fact, he almost seems to relish in exploring those aspects of human experience that most of us just try to avoid. He talks about grief and loss and the inevitability of facing challenges.
Yeah, it's almost like he's saying, look, life is going to throw punches. Here's how to take them and keep moving forward.
That's a great way to put it. He's not offering, some magical formula for avoiding pain or hardship. Instead, he's giving us a framework for navigating those challenges with strength and resilience. He's teaching us how to cultivate that unshakable core, that inner peace that can't be touched by external circumstances.
So it's about building up those internal defenses so that when those storms inevitably hit, you're not completely swept away.
Exactly. He's equipping us with the tools to weather those storms, to emerge from them even stronger.
Okay, I that's starting to make sense, but I have to admit it's still kind of hard to wrap my head around. What does this actually look like in practice? Like how do we apply these stoic principles when we're, dealing with grief, for example?
Right. Well, remember what we talked about earlier. Seneca acknowledges that grief is a natural human response to loss. He's not saying don't feel sad or just get over it. He understands that loss is painful, but he cautions against that excessive, prolonged mourning, the kind that consumes us, prevents us from moving forward.
So it's about finding that balance between like acknowledging the pain but not letting it define you.
Exactly. It's about allowing ourselves to feel the grief, but not getting lost in it. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of our darkest moments, we still have a choice in how we respond.
That reminds me of something else we talked about, focusing on what we can control. It sounds like Seneca would say that while we can't control the fact that loss happens, we can control how we choose to react to it.
Precisely. We can choose to dwell in sadness and despair, or we can choose to honor the memory of what we've lost, while also, focusing on the things we still have, the people we still love, the opportunities that still lie ahead.
This is starting to feel more actionable. It's not about suppressing our emotions or pretending that everything is fine. It's about acknowledging those emotions, processing them, and then choosing to move forward in a way that honors our values and our supreme good.
That's a great way to summarize it, and it's not just about grief. The same principle can be applied to any hardship we face in life.
Okay, so let's say we're facing a different kind of challenge, maybe a career setback, a financial struggle, or a relationship problem.
Yeah.
How would Seneca advise us to approach those situations?
He likely encourages us to kind of take a step back.
Okay.
And assess the situation objectively. What are the facts? What aspects of the situation are within our control, and what aspects are outside of our control?
So it's that classic Stoic dichotomy of control.
Exactly.
Separating what we can influence from what we can't.
And once we've done that, we can focus our energy on those things we can actually change. Our attitude, our effort, our choices. And we can practice acceptance for those things we can't change, recognizing that even though we may not like the situation, fighting against it is only going to create more suffering.
This is making me think about all the times I've, wasted energy stressing about things I couldn't change. It sounds like Seneca would say that's a recipe for unhappiness. Instead, he'd encourage us to accept those things and then focus on what we can do to improve our situation.
Precisely. He'd likely remind us that even in the midst of hardship, there are always opportunities for growth, for learning, for developing resilience.
So it's not about pretending that challenges don't exist or that we shouldn't feel any negative emotions. It's about approaching those challenges with a sense of clarity, acceptance, and a focus on what we can do to move forward in a positive direction.
That's a great way to put it. It's about cultivating that inner strength, that ability to face adversity with courage and composure. It's about recognizing that even in our darkest moments, we still have the power to choose how we respond.
This has been an incredible journey. We've explored Seneca's ideas on advice, finding our supreme good, dealing with grief and hardship, the true meaning of wealth, and even how our actions have a real impact on the world.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to kind of delve into the depths of his wisdom
Yeah.
and see how relevant his ideas are.
Yeah, but before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more topic that Seneca emphasizes, and that's the importance of finding contentment. In a world that's constantly telling us we need more, bigger, better, how do we cultivate that sense of inner peace and satisfaction?
That's a great question, and one that Seneca addresses directly in his letters. He talks about how true contentment doesn't come from external possessions or achievements. It comes from aligning our lives with our supreme good.
Okay. From living in accordance with virtue.
So it's about finding satisfaction in the process of living a good life.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true wealth lies in cultivating those inner qualities.
Yeah.
Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, the things that allow us to live a fulfilling and meaningful life.
This makes me think about all the times I've, felt dissatisfied because I was comparing myself to others or focusing on what I lacked. It sounds like Seneca would say that's a recipe for unhappiness. Instead, he'd encourage us to focus on our own journey, our own progress, and to find contentment in the simple act of living a virtuous life.
You've hit the nail on the head. He'd likely remind us that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, from living in alignment with our values and striving to be the best versions of ourselves.
So as we conclude our deep dive into Seneca's letters, I think the question we're left with is this. How can we take these ancient ideas and make them actionable, in our own lives? Right. It starts with that self-reflection, taking the time to understand our own nature, our values, our strengths, our weaknesses. It's about asking ourselves those tough questions. What is my supreme good?
Yeah.
What kind of life do I want to live? What legacy do I want to leave behind?
And then it's about making, conscious choices, choosing to focus on what we can control, choosing to act in accordance with virtue, choosing to find contentment in the present moment.
Right. It's about cultivating those stoic practices like journaling, mindfulness, negative visualization, things that can help us to strengthen our minds and build resilience.
And it's about, finding inspiration from those who have come before us.
Yeah.
From Seneca himself to modern day Stoics like Ryan Holiday or Tim Ferriss, and countless others who are embracing these timeless principles.
Right. Stoicism isn't just an ancient philosophy. It's a way of life, a path towards living with greater purpose and meaning and inner peace.
So as you go about your day, consider this. What would it look like to embrace your own nature, to make choices guided by virtue, to find contentment in this simple act of living?
Perhaps in those quiet moments of reflection, you'll discover that the wisdom of Seneca is just as relevant and powerful today as it was, centuries ago.
And maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself living a life that is a little bit more stoic, a little bit more resilient, and a lot more fulfilling.